Welcome to Let's Talk Death, conversations to inform and inspire. Let's Talk Death is a series of conversations with some amazing people from various fields. Our goal through these conversations is to normalize, educate, and demystify the taboo around death, dying, and the journey of grief. Hello, welcome to this episode of Let's Talk Death. I'm Fran Solomon.
And I'm Andy McNeil.
And we are thrilled to be your host for these conversations. Let's Talk Death is brought to you by Heal Grief, a social support network creating community after someone has died. Everything we do is inspired by our core belief that no one should ever grieve alone.
Our goal with this program is to have a friendly chat with some amazing people so we can help normalize and educate our Heal Grief community. Our guest today is Ronnie Walker. Ronnie holds a master's degree in counseling and postgraduate certifications from the National Institute for Trauma and Loss in Children and the American Academy of Bereavement. She has received several awards for her pioneering online work and ongoing effort to help suicide loss survivors. In 2020, she was named Loss Survivor of the Year by the American Association of Suicidology. And in 2019, she received the Father Charles T. Ruby Award from Catholic Charities, Chicago, for her contributions to lost survivors. In 2008, founded the Alliance of Hope, an online source of support for people who have lost loved ones to suicide and the professionals who want to help them. Since 2008, the Alliance of Hope has hosted more than 10 million visits to its website. The community forum is the heartbeat of the organization. It transcends time and distance, operating like a 24/7 support group to more than 9,500 people. Ronnie, we are delighted to have you as a guest on our show.
Thank you so much. And if I could just correct one thing, we have just under 20,000 people on our forum. So I think maybe that was supposed to be 19,500 that you read on the forum. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me.
Ronnie, before we speak about your work, may I ask, did you have a death loss in your life that led you on your career path?
Mm-hmm. I did. It was in 1995, in August of 1995, that my stepson, Channing Werner Stoll, we called him Chan, ended his life. He was 21 years old and he was a junior at Stanford University. He had dealt with bipolar disorder for about 5 years and he fought it valiantly and he fell into a deep depression. And when he ended his life, it was as if there was a grenade that exploded in our household. And I was a counselor at the time, but nothing had prepared me for what we were experiencing. So had you talked to me back then in the first week or month or even the first years after Chan died, I never would have envisioned doing what I'm doing now. I wanted nothing at all to do with suicide. I was just struggling to survive. And then as the years went on, I began to see that there was a void, and that's what led me into working in this area. So yes, we did have a loss.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So tell us about Alliance of Hope.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Alliance of Hope is a grief support organization for people who have lost loved ones to suicide. Back in 2008, when I launched it, I was already leading some support groups in Chicago, some in-person support groups in Chicago. And when I looked on the web and when I saw what was happening in support groups, I saw that there was a particular culture that surrounded lost survivors. There was actually a void in the availability of support and a void in quality support. And so people were doing a lot to raise awareness or funds for suicide prevention, for academic research, to discover the cause of suicide. But I saw that the lost survivors were profoundly traumatized and they really didn't have access to a lot of good grief support. So the other thing that I noticed was that the prevailing conversation in the culture seemed to be, you never get over it, you just learn to live with it. You've joined the club no one wants to belong to. And I can't really tell you exactly what happened. It was like something tapped me on the shoulder, excuse me. And I just thought, I'd like to alter the culture. So how can we begin to generate something else? And I sat down, I was 60 years old at the time. I didn't know what I was doing. I created a website at my kitchen table. I added an online forum because I thought that would be a good idea. People like to talk to each other. I didn't know anything about managing a forum. And then I waited. And in the beginning, we were, I think, number 10,000 in a Google search for suicide loss support.
Yeah.
These days, we have about 13 to 15 new loss survivors joining our forum every day. Thousands log on for support every day. And we've touched thousands of people. So, and people from all over the English-speaking world. So that's a little bit about the Alliance of Hope. We not only have our forum, we work with first responders, we work with funeral directors, we have an informational website, we have a blog, we have a newsletter. So we touch a lot of people in the community.
It's interesting how you say, when you first did it, you really didn't know what you were kind of doing, and you created a website and you did these things, and by creating that infrastructure and building something, obviously there are things that you learned along the way, and you've created this network and this community. Is there anything that surprised you just in that process of creating it, that you back and you go, wow, you know, I didn't know what I didn't know, but now I know this? Or
well, I launched it and then I waited, and about 3 days later, Joanne from Australia joined. She was the first one, and then someone from New Zealand, and then maybe Illinois or whatever. And there were different things that happened, but one of the things that really did surprise me was that after 3 weeks, I came downstairs early in the morning from my bedroom. I opened up my computer, I looked at the forum, and it was filled with horrible, horrible photographs, pornographic photographs.
oh,
The spammer had put them all over. And I was like, oh my God. And what I didn't realize was that the company that I was working with had offered this forum software, but it had no spam protection on it.
oh,
So
what a lesson. It's like one of those difficult lessons to learn on spam. And oh, wow.
So anyway, yeah. So you know, each step along the way you learn, and today we have about probably between 45 and 50 trained volunteers on our forum. They're at different levels of development, and we monitor the culture. So we put in place a lot of guidelines. So we don't allow slander. Somebody can't come on the forum and say, my son killed himself because his wife, Mary Smith at First Street in Peoria, had 3 abortions. Or, you know, you can't slander somebody. And we don't want anything that's too graphic. And so we have a lot of, the other thing that surprised me was how many people are suicidal. Mm-hmm. And I had not wanted to work with anyone who was suicidal as a clinician. So that was a big surprise to me, because so many loss survivors feel suicidal in the aftermath. They don't necessarily attempt, but they want to get out of their own skin. They are in so much pain and they want to join their loved one. So we had to put in place a lot of things over the years. I think we've learned how to maintain a culture. And that's the secret of that forum. It doesn't drift with the most recent post. If it's a toxic post, we're able to turn the threads.
Yeah. It sounded like, even when you were sharing earlier about sort of the pervasive attitude that many were being kind of fed by messaging that was fed, that sort of maybe even a self-defeating sort of a message, that it sounds like that for you, it was important that what you put out there was somewhere, certainly where connection can happen, but where a sense of hope and it sounds like there are important values that are a piece of that to maintain that safe environment for people.
I think we're doing three things on our forum. It's exactly what you're saying. We're bearing witness to people's stories without judging or recoiling. We're providing information. We often add links into a post, you know, oh, you're feeling guilty. Here's a link to this page on our website where you can read a lot more about guilt or secondary wounds or anxiety or whatever. So we bear witness, we provide information, and then we provide hope for going beyond just surviving. So you have the people who are further out who can say to a new person, I've been where you are. And they have more credibility than any clinician. You know?
Right. People who have been there and who get it have that credibility.
So a lot of this was really about altering that conversation, because I would see when I was leading support groups, and in the few websites back in 2008, there were about 6 or 7. A lot of them had broken links. There would be this conversation of never get over it. Now, if you lose a child or a spouse, it's a part of your fabric of your family is torn, and yes, there's a case to be made for that. But to live into that isn't necessarily very empowering. So I wanted to really stress the idea of being catapulted into this abyss of darkness, the dark night of the soul, struggling to survive. It's the hero's journey, the archetypal theory of the hero's journey, story of the hero's journey, growing stronger, wiser, and going through some kind of personal transformation. And the other thing that I saw was, and forgive me for this, but as soon as I was seeing that people back in the 2007 and 6, as soon as they came to a support group, there were people at the support group who were saying, oh, now you should work for suicide prevention. And that's fine if that's what they're called to do. Somebody, you're called to do that. I am called to do that in a particular way. But I think that part of what happens on this journey is that as we survive and grow stronger, we're able to get in touch with the deepest commitments of our heart and soul and hear those yearnings. And then move into action to make a meaningful difference, so that's the natural course of the journey. And so that was really what the Alliance of Hope was about. People think of it as a grief organization, and it does a good job with that. But for me, it's more of a transformational organization to say, we're here, we're going to be with you, you're not alone, you'll make it through, and then watch people grow stronger and get in touch with the commitments and move into action.
I love how you said that. I love how you said that. I may use those lines. How many people a year are suiciding?
How many
people a year do you think, in your estimate? Do we know how many people suicide a year?
Oh, how many people die by suicide? I think, Andy, you probably have better statistics than I. What is it, like about 48,000 or something like that in the United States?
It's high. And again, we're actually still looking at the statistics for this year and over COVID and what are the numbers. But yeah, I think that's about where it is. So it's and of course it also is by community too. So some communities have a higher incidence based on a number of factors, right? That are certainly part of that. Well, Ronnie, I have to say, just hearing you talk is refreshing. To hear that, number one, the way that you talk about what you do and your program and what you're providing, the space that you're providing for people. One of my deep beliefs, and I know Fran as well, is that we want people to have that safe space where they can be where they need to be at that moment, but also find hope and renewal and inspiration and all of those things that we also know that we need, that helps to propel us in our lives. whatever our circumstance might be or might have been. In that. So
Yes.
Thank you for that.
Yes. And I'm sure something led you into the arena. You know, Fran shared with me a little bit. I got to talk with her yesterday. We met yesterday. And I think all of us have something that spurred our movement into this area.
Right. Well, I think it's what creates such a sense of passion around people who do what we do in this space. So, Ronnie, we actually we're about out of time, but I wanted to give you an opportunity. Folks who are listening in quite often want to know how they can connect with our guests or connect with your programs or the things that you have out there. How might people connect with you and your work?
Well, they can go to allianceofhope.org, and that's Alliance of Hope, not Alliance for Hope, allianceofhope.org. And that's our website. It's filled with information. And there's a link to our forum. If they're interested in joining the forum, they can do that. And there's a whole About Us area on the website, so they can find us that way.
Great, wonderful. And we'll have that link on our website as well. Ronnie, we want to thank you so much for being a guest here at Let's Talk Death and for sharing the inspiration behind the work you do and your passion that comes along with it.
Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me. And, you know, I got to talk with you and find out about what you're doing. And it's so broad and it's touching so many hundreds of thousands of people, Fran, and I just really want to acknowledge you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
We had a wonderful conversation yesterday that people aren't going to get to see, but I'm so happy to make your acquaintance, both of you. And thank you, Andy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep. So, and we also want to thank those who are joining us for this episode of Let's Talk Death. If you would like to learn more about Heal Grief, please visit us at healgrief.org. At healgrief.org, you can learn more about all the programs and resources of Heal Grief, including our national network of support for grieving young adults. It's a program we call Actively Moving Forward.
And if you know a bereaved young adult, refer them to our AMF app, where adults of all ages connect with others experiencing a similar death loss. And last, make sure to sign up at healgrief.org to receive our newsletter for links to future episodes of Let's Talk Death.
And so again, with that, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time on Let's Talk Death.